Thank you very much. Welcome everyone, and of course on behalf of the panels as well, whom I will introduce in a minute. But before we start with the discussion, we would like to invite you to vote. If we can get the question up. We would like to ask you to vote for the following question. And you only have 10 seconds to vote. So please do so as soon as possible, and then you will see the result as well in a minute. So the question is, because it's related to our session about is the hotel industry prepared to welcome digitalization with its innovation in automation, Internet of Things, and artificial intelligence. So in which fields is the hotel industry already willing to integrate innovations? Number one, if you vote for number one, in automation, in general sense. Second, Internet of Things. Third, artificial intelligence, AI. And number four, of course, in all of these fields, combination. So you have 10 seconds now to vote. Please. Ooh, this is exciting. Wow, interesting. So we got the winner here, automation, 38.2% of the votes. And the least is artificial intelligence.
Surprise.
Surprise, surprise. We'll get back on this, but just to remember these results later, and then we'll see how this would influence our discussion, or maybe how the audience would be influenced based on our discussion. Right, so to start with, let me introduce our fantastic four panels for today. The first, Sarah Kennedy from Sabre.
Yes.
If you can introduce yourself.
Absolutely. So I'm Sarah Kennedy from Sabre Hospitality, and I run our global marketing efforts for the hospitality solutions business, and that is Sabre's newest and fastest growing area of business and investment. So we have end-to-end solutions for the hospitality segment, including central reservations, property management system, booking engine, call center services, and business intelligence, as well as guest experience and loyalty solutions. So it runs the gamut, and we're investing into software as a service and really helping our industry move forward and drive innovation across the service sector.
Thank you, Sarah. Second one, Andreas Pröfrock from Alcatel-Lucent.
Enterprise.
Enterprise.
Yeah, that's right. Morning, everybody. I'm Andreas Pröfrock, Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise, as said. I'm looking after strategic alliances and technology partnerships. And before that, I used to look after the hospitality business within Alcatel-Lucent. What we do is actually we provide the right foundation, the right solutions for hotels, everything that's around hospitality, from data products to integration services to communication products to mobile engagement. So the entire, let's say, ecosystem that is needed within hospitality. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. Then we move to the next panel, which is Mareike Rossmann.
Yeah, so welcome everybody. Thanks for having me here today. I'm originally coming from the hotel industry, so I'm also having the view not just from a technical part, so also from a hotel view. And now I'm working for IgnitionOne, a marketing technology provider supporting hotels globally. In Europe especially, we have a great partnership with Lindner hotels, where we help them to improve the digital experience and digital engagement of potential and existing customers by understanding each individual users, what the user needs, what the relevance of a user is, and how he is engaged with your brand. So what we are actually doing is analyzing a user's behavior when he walks in your website, which is mainly, or we call it your digital reception, to offer an online service which is similar to the service the people you're working for you offering at the reception in your hotel.
Thank you, Mareike. Last but not least, Rohan, Thakkar.
Sure. Thank you. I'm Rohan Thakkar. I'm Vice President of Development for YOTEL Hotels. YOTEL is a young, new, dynamic brand based in the UK with 12 hotels under construction currently and 5 hotels open under 2 brands, YOTEL Air, which is based in the European markets right now, in-terminal hotels, and then YOTEL, which our first hotel opened about 5 years ago in New York, which is 713 rooms in Times Square. Our global pipeline now goes across both brands. We're opening in Singapore and Changi, and then as well across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, and in North America. The concept revolves around 2 main things: innovation in digital, as well as real estate efficiencies.
Thank you, Rohan. I think we can start immediately with you as well, since you are kind of one of the young kind of hotel providers at the moment, very innovative, and I don't know, what do you think about the result just now? Was it surprising to you?
Well, I guess it goes in our favor, so that's good, because automation is a very strong part of our brand. So we were one of the first brands to adopt the kiosk check-in. So kiosks were, when we started the brand, actually the brand has been around for several years, but we really think the brand started in 2011 when we opened in YOTEL, New York, as we saw the new generation of YOTEL. So YOTEL, when we started the brand, the kiosk idea was actually, every consultant told us it was not a good idea. People thought that going into this automation world would actually detract from what guests experienced. And in fact, we still have 96% of our check-ins completely by kiosks. So the way we look at innovation and automation is not necessarily creating something that's not been tried and tested in another industry. So we brought kiosks from the airline industry. So everything we do now, even as we think of innovation in revenue management, the way we look at the future of our brand, we actually think of it as what has been tried and tested in another industry. So the airline industry is where we were inspired by, and even though we have a brand that's called YOTEL Air, even the city brand was inspired by the design by airline cabins. And so in that sense, that's why we are very favorable that we think automation is a way that the industry will be going. Separately, we also have a luggage robot called YOBOT in New York. And that really, when you walk into the hotel, is the first thing you see, and has actually given us a lot of press, and actually more in the sense of what you recognize YOTEL by sometimes by this luggage robot. It wasn't really just a PR gimmick of putting it in the lobby. It actually, in fact, increased our efficiencies. So we were able to reduce the number of staff in our hotel because of a few less bellmen, but also reduce the amount of real estate space. So as we move forward in our new hotels, every owner is actually mandated to have some sort of innovation element. So as we pitch the brand, there's actually a line item in the construction budget that's for innovation. So whether it is a YOBOT or a robot, but also innovation doesn't necessarily have to be a robot. It has to be something that can increase efficiencies from an operations standpoint, can increase the returns at the end of the day through more efficient real estate, whatever it may be. But we actually think that everywhere we go, we're localizing innovation and automation in different ways.
Sounds very cool. But what are the challenges that you have encountered so far?
Sure. So this year we're opening in Boston, San Francisco, and Singapore. So that in itself is 3 completely different markets. Boston and San Francisco are probably a little bit more similar in the sense of technology focused. But as we look at innovation and automation, as we were speaking about earlier, deriving what we do in innovation has to be very much culturally oriented. So actually in Boston, one of our innovation elements is a very unique vending machine that actually the way the food is, 24-hour, et cetera, and it's a local startup. So we've partnered with startups in both Boston and San Francisco to help, again, connect with the local community. In Singapore, if we put that same innovation element, it may not necessarily attract the same PR that we might be getting from what we're doing in Boston. So in Singapore, we're looking into something which is more related to drones and being able to deliver drinks at our bar through the drone system. But the Singapore government is actually encouraging us to use innovation. So it's a very different element in the sense of the challenges are good challenges in some ways.
Well, for some countries, it might be a challenge in terms of the role of the government, of course, as we already discussed as well earlier. So anybody would like to take on it?
Yeah, maybe because I'm also working closely with a couple of hotels in Germany, and what we do is collecting first-party data, and we even have here really issues to convince companies or companies to convince people internally that it's really important to collect data. But when it comes to data restrictions, we are all talking about matching different devices, mobile devices, with our laptops to build one cross-user profile. But in Germany, for example, we're even not allowed to match IP addresses with with mobile IDs. So how should we, from a technical view, it's possible to have that kind of profiles, but how should we realize it if we have government restrictions or even internal privacy restrictions within companies? Because I still think we, especially in Europe and in Germany, we still need to do a lot of occasional work to get this cultural thinking within a company that data, automation, intelligence, robots are really necessary and can help us, but we're still walking on the edge because nobody really knows how far we need to go, and we need a lot of more support from the government here from an educational standpoint as well.
Okay, and about the result of the voting, what do you think?
It's not surprising. Automatization is like something everybody needs to think about, because it starts with we are all restricted in resources. So how many things can we really do manually? So we need automatization. We need to start with that. And one question IgnitionOne is answering, or where we help customers, is to find some automatization when it comes to the customer lifecycle. So how can we serve customers from an unknown user, so the pre-stay period before he booked a hotel room, during his stay, or how can we serve him after his stay in a really personalized way to know what he's looking for, when it's the right time to interact with him, when it's the right time to send him an offer, what kind of offer he likes. Does he like for example, a wellness voucher that he books, or does he prefer a 10% discount? So when is the right time, when is the right moment, and what is the right channel to interact with our customers? And here we need automatization, here we need intelligent self-learning algorithms behind, because humans are limited. We are not having the intelligence to set up business rules which can predict the behavior of a customer. So here we definitely need the algorithm, and I think that's what already is in the heads of everybody here, and that's one reason why you voted for automatization as well.
Thank you. So you are basically try to provide customers experience in your approach here by having this combination of automatization and also the AI type, so that you can, with this algorithm, try to match the needs and the wants of the customers, so to say.
That's correct. So what I mentioned before, like one really important part for the hotel industry is the own website, because the website is, like we call it, the digital reception. So people who are coming to your website, like call it the walk-ins, we call it in the hotel industry when they come to the property, they are already interested in the things you offer in your property. So here we have a really, really big opportunity, and normally I think around 80 or 90% of the visitors are leaving your website without converting, without booking, and never come back. So what we are doing is really to leverage we call it the first-party user data to find the automatization to interact with the users. So what we know is, what is the user looking at on your website? Is he interested in booking a room? Is he interested in a wellness offer? So how deep is he going into your website? Is he going directly to the booking engine? So it means he already has a high likelihood to convert. So to really understand the need and the mood of the user. So how relevant is he for you as a brand? Is it for you important to spend budget on him? Or is it just a person who isn't that important? So what kind of marketing or digital strategy should we adapt around that user? So what we really do is putting the user, the individual user, the data of that user in the heart of your technology, landscape to enrich PMS systems, for example, to make them even more intelligent or sophisticated, where then the guys over here come and use that data to make the whole process sophisticated.
Yeah. Thank you, Mareike. Well, since you already mentioned the guys over here, let's move to the other side then.
Well, I mean, and I think to that point, there is such an opportunity for us to shift the paradigm and how the industry has always operated, especially with the heart and soul of a property, which property management systems by name have always been designed around the property, right? And us flipping it on its head to start to think about how do you design that experience just around the guest and their needs first. So when we think about automation, I think I love seeing that in the results. It's all about what services or functions or tasks can we start to automate within the system itself that allow the actual service experience in the physical environment to be better. So how can we help through automation a service agent or a front desk clerk stop staring at their screen and be more engaged in a physical way that has a real emotional connection to a guest to serve them better?
And what have you been developing in this period in terms of AI?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So we have a lot of investment happening right now, actually, in our property management system. So our version 4 of that system is now that design is being completely overhauled and done in a way it's all about the guest. So we're also experimenting in a lot of different ways with different types of data that we can pull into that first experience, so that you know and that your property can sense in a very scientific way when someone's walking onto the property, who they are and what they, what maybe not only what their location is, but specifically maybe what other types of data we can pull in to help inform the service agent about how to interact with that guest. So maybe what is their attention span? How distracted are they? How sleep deprived are they as a traveler? And it can tailor the service experience in a very unique way. But the most important thing is to make it work in the operational reality of a hotel, which means you have to have on-demand and actually workflow interaction with an agent that can alert them to that in that moment. And also to help extend the service experience across an entire hotel. So how can you start to, in real time, use that data and have it be sensed by a housekeeper even, who can actually get an alert on their mobile device? So why can't, every time you walk down a hotel hallway, any employee that you interact with, why wouldn't they be able to know your name in real time? To say, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, how are you doing today?
Cool. What about you, Andreas? What's your take on it?
Kind of funny, when I look at the results, is I see two things. One is the 60+% of automation. Mm-hmm. Then it's 27.5 in more or less IoT, and then 27.5% in all of the above. Right, so that's like a bit of a conundrum to me. But anyhow, we will come to that point a bit later on. So where we come into play actually is because what I just heard is, it's the, let's say, more or less qualification, identification, the profiling of your guests. But you need to bring this insight into the hotel operations. And when you do this, you have to have a solution that gives you end-to-end transparency, mobility support, because, guests and employees in the hotel are highly mobile. Now, put on top of that IoT, and there's no getting away from it. We all love IoT because we all have this in one form or another at home. People are starting to look at refrigerators, that are connected to the internet at home. We're talking about, like you would call this a minibar thing. So the tray for the milk is always almost empty. It's going to be ordered, it's going to be delivered. So that basically home experience a guest takes with him into the hotel. So now there's the same expectation. You provide certain IoT elements into this one. So they're hotel provided, hospitality provided. They're more or less static. They sit there. But the guests, they have smart devices, especially with the, let's say, millennials nowadays. And have you ever checked the security queue, when someone is controlled and then a bag goes open and 2 laptops, 3 tablets, 5 smartphones coming out. So they're all being brought into a hotel. They're all being connected. But itself, a smart device is not an IoT device. The application that sits on top of that is the IoT device. It's the IoT application. And they are highly mobile. So how do you make sure that the IoT service you provide from a hotel side is interacting with the IoT service the guest is having on that side. And this is where we come into play, when we really have these IoT containment, the interaction to the pre-qualification and the profiling engines behind it. And we link this into several directions to really encompass the entire hotel operation.
But aren't we, when we talk about then AI on the one hand and IoT on the other hand, when they are integrated, basically you are saying that, well, we can have some kind of new, opportunities over there.
So what actually, when you look at the, let's say, the moniker of Internet of Things and artificial intelligence, let me rephrase this, right? IoT plus AI in a hotel is hospitality of things. So the question you guys have to ask yourself is really, HOT is hot, right? Do you want to become hot? That's the biggest question here, right? A hotel of things, where things are connected, where you provide these personalized experience. I'll give you an example, right? So you arrive as a business traveler on an airport, we all use Google services on our smartphones, we all have this information. If I now collect this information and feed this back into the hotel knows that I'm just about to jump in a taxi. Due to the fact that there's also a taxi app that provides information, I know the expected time of arrival. So if it's late, I can offer maybe as a hotel a midnight snack. I can provide the favorite drink or whatever there is, the wish there is from a guest. I can provide this. I can maybe offer a late stay. I start to do upselling. On the other hand, I also can optimize my operations, my hotel operations, by looking into the profile and saying this guest is from the north. He prefers his room every time at 17 degrees instead of 25 degrees. So at that moment, I start to tune the air conditioning system. He has a certain preference because it's late, so I dim the lights, I close the curtains in an automated way. Therefore, I achieve savings because I don't have to fire up the room for, let's say, 2 or 3 hours. So this is how we see things and what we do, what we bring to the table from our
provider
solution
provider.
set.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so a few things to follow up on that side from the brand perspective. From our side, looking at the airport brand, speaking with our city brand, we actually in London and Singapore, our goal is to actually be in every city, major city where we can have an airport brand and a city brand. The reason also being that both hotels can communicate for that exact reason too, to be able to control, and not control, but necessarily, but that guest experience. So they come, get off the plane, they stay in Paris, and then actually, right now we're looking to have Paris communicate with New York, so they're flying in Terminal 2E on Air France, and then we know that when their flight leaves and they're coming to YOTEL New York, and so we can actually help even facilitate the ability for them to get off the plane, come there, and have the guest experience straight in YOTEL New York. So it's the same property management system, et cetera. The second thing you said that was interesting from our side is, of course, we have the kiosks and the robots and everything else, but really what the brand came down to from where we invest the most money was in the shower, the bed, and the Wi-Fi. And we don't have anything in the room where you have an extra iPhone or you have an extra iPad because of the exact fact that we know everyone comes with 6 laptops and iPads and phones, et cetera. So we have the connections all over the room, even places you wouldn't even expect, but then you think, okay, well, actually, I do need another place to charge, and I don't want it by my bedside because I don't want to hear that when I wake up. So everywhere we go, and we've thought about connectivity, especially in a small space of 17 square meters.
Cool. Mareike, you would like to add?
No, I have a question, actually. So putting on the hospitality classes, I still can remember when I started working in hospitality in 2006, if I can remember correctly. I know the website even was really sophisticated, so having our own website. So what would you recommend hotels or how to start that kind of process to develop towards the Internet of Things and the whole technology?
You're asking me that question, right? Okay, good. Just asking.
Yeah.
So I think before I give you a direct answer to your question, I think we have to take a step back and have to have an honest look at where we are in the guest life cycle, right? So from this selection process, if my boss tells me I need to go to Berlin, okay, I need to go to Berlin. So the place is somewhat fixed. Now I start, choosing a hotel. So I have to choose a hotel. Based on what do I do this? There are certain reviews, right? And the reviews are made up based on, my network experience, the location, the facility, so the services I'm going to get there. Then comes nothing, and then comes the price. So if 1, 2, 3 is not correct, the price is number 1, right? Otherwise, those technology things is. Once you have this in place and you advertise this in the right manner, so you have the right tools, I think in you ladies, you provide the right tools and pushing this information out, making it a bit savvy towards the guest, you come to the booking part. So how can you facilitate, help in the booking process, what data do you collect, what data do you feed back into the systems within the hotel? So then you come to the point of the, let's say, check-in, right? Ever experienced the check-in, late at night, 20,000 people in front of you, you're standing in queue? So, research did show that waiting 8 minutes or more, the hotel gets bad reviews. So you need to do something around it. How can you do the self-check-in, for example, or a pre-check-in, or get some kind of support. Then you come to, this stay in the hotel. And there are 3 buzzwords for us. The way we see this is, it is connect, personalize, and enjoy. Those 3 things are very, very important, right? So what goes the minute you come to the checkout process, what goes for the check-in goes for the checkout as well. And then, for a lot of hotels, it does stop here. But there's a missing element in it. Any idea what that would be?
Well, we've got a few actually based on, but keep going.
But there's a missing element, so...
Yeah, no, it's across the entire journey, I think, and even focusing on them as guests first versus being actually travelers. Extracting out, I think, because you went straight from even the booking right to check-in, and there's a huge gap between the 2. But continue.
Yeah. So what we see actually as the missing gap is from the checkout back to the guest, it's the aftercare.
Yeah.
So the element of aftercare is quite important, because if you do this in the right way, in the right manner, your reviews going up, you have a huge guest, satisfaction and a retention of the guests, because they will come back because they love you for it, right? So this is the way we're gonna put this, but it starts with how do you present yourself and how engaged are you in the first part of this guest life cycle.
It is interesting then, because now we have 3 phases in customer's journey, right? Because you have the pre-arrival, during the stay, and post-arrival. Now, I can imagine that in each of these phases, the role of in IoT and AI could be different. So, how would you define it? How would you then define, for instance, in the pre-arrival, that you would like to influence the guest in a way so that they really will follow your suggestions in that? You mentioned a couple of things, the preferences, for instance. So how do you think that you can, because you probably need some data to be able to, match the expectations. How do you think that would be possible?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of data about individuals, even if I think in hospitality we assume they have to be a loyalty member to have logged into our site, and that's just simply untrue. We have a lot of ways to sort of track the breadcrumbs of them as individuals and as travelers, and also look at what the trip catalyst actually is. And that's kind of what you alluded to. You said Berlin, right? And a lot of times in business travel, we do know where we're going already because there is a trip catalyst, and then that shapes what our booking path looks like afterward. But I think we've got a lot of opportunity, especially with artificial intelligence, from just a chatbot perspective that Sabre Labs specifically has been experimenting with a lot, is how do you start to answer questions for them or help provide and extend the service experience in a semi-automated way, not fully, and how do you create interfaces that allow a hotel to control what's the amount of artificial interaction that can happen versus when is it appropriate to turn it over to a human? And when do you go back to the bot? How do you manage it between the two? And how do you take whatever your brand promise is and your strategy, and how do you apply that in that context? And so answering questions like, about the pool or construction nearby or how close it is to the tube stop, et cetera, those kinds of things can be automated in a fashion that creates a service experience that extends well beyond the booking path as well as the on-stay arrival as well.
You have the data. What about you guys?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's important as we think about loyalty, for example. We don't have a loyalty program because we have 4 airport hotels and 1 city hotel currently, but now as a global brand, we have to think about what are we going to do, and the days of having a traditional brand loyalty program are obviously somewhat gone. So this data is incredibly important for us as we think about how do we develop a program that may not be points-based, but may also even be social media-based or rewarding local guests or local residents who are coming to our hotel to stay and have a drink or a dinner or whatever it may be, also reward them. But how do we get the data for who's coming to our hotel and what are the type of guests? And in the airports, to be honest, we're more of a convenience necessarily. So they don't want to be interacting with staff as much. They just really want a room. So again, thinking of loyalty there, they're coming for a different reason than a guest coming to a traditional hotel brand. But the data is so important for us to develop this program, and we actually, to be honest, are doing that this year. So it's a big part of what we're doing.
Okay. I think in IgnitionOne also have certain data.
Yeah, we have.
On that.
Yeah, we have the what I mentioned before, the first party or real-time behavior data. So what really important is, so let's put it again around that digital reception. So first thing is we need to bring qualified traffic to that reception. So it's not just bringing traffic, new users to the reception, it's bringing qualified traffic. So using your data, analyzing your data to build really lookalikes, to find users out in the world which are similar to users who already booked with you or already existing customers, bring that to your reception. And then the second question is, so as soon as the user comes to the reception, we are able to analyze the needs and the mood or the relevance of that user. And now the really important thing is to capture that user. So how can we offer the right tools for the digital receptionist to serve the user through the customer journey from the unknown user to a known customer. So how can we help the user? How can we interact with the user in a personalized way that we make sure that he's booking the room on the hotel property website, that we can start with interacting during his stay in a personalized way. Establish loyalty programs, for example, business travelers. So when I'm booking a room, a hotel, today I'm booking the hotel in Düsseldorf. But when I'm leaving the hotel, in the CRM system or in the property management system, my data is there with the interest or my stay in Düsseldorf. But when I'm leaving, when I'm checking out, I'm coming back to the website. I'm not looking for Düsseldorf probably anymore because tomorrow or 1 week afterwards, I need to go to Frankfurt. So my interest profile changed, but the data you have in your system is still, my interest profile is still Düsseldorf. So what would happen? Maybe the next offer or the loyalty program, the next email I get is an offer for Düsseldorf. But I'm not interested in that because it is in the past. It was in the past. So what's really what's really necessary is that you always understand the real-time interest of your users, that the data in your systems is intelligent. It's like up to date. Yesterday is already the past. We not care about yesterday. We care about today or the future. So it's really necessary to find simple solutions how to export that kind of real-time data to your systems. And that's the point where all the technology providers come into place. Our job is it really to help you to understand your customers, putting them in the heart of your system and to find solutions which are easy to implement and easy to develop.
And one just example of that, I think it's a great point, because again, we have enough data about you as in your profile, and that example I think is a great one, to give you some level of personalization, right? And I think that we've experimented with this with a property called Fontainebleau in Miami that has enough data about you. They know if you were booking through their website, and then if you came back to the website actually while you're on property. We know that. We know where your location is, and we have cookies in place to know that you made a booking directly on their site. So why would we then show you rooms? You already have one, you're checked in, you're there. So instead, based on those just two simple data elements, we're able to then promote cabana booking to them while they're on property. And cabanas, in fact, for Fontainebleau can actually have a much higher ADR than a room itself, and they have 100 of them. So it's a way for them to merchandise on property in real time, something that's an asset that in the past hasn't been easy to sell or distribute like a room, and now we're turning it into that by connecting a little bit of the data on the back end to personalize the right moment to make that offer to a guest.
Okay, so we know now that what can happen, what needs to be captured, so to say, in terms of the data for the pre-arrival. Now, during the stay, I think, Andreas, you mentioned yesterday about the IoT in terms of how that can really facilitate the guest experience.
Yeah, so when you really look at, what happens when you're inside a hotel, the expectations and what people want to have, you see a number of megatrends, First of all, and that fits perfectly into what you said, automation. It's the guest room automation itself. So it's really controlling through smart devices, your air conditioning system, your curtains, the shutters, the lighting, those type of things, right? So then by enabling IoT within your hotel operations, there's one big plus for you guys in hospitality, and that is you change from preventative maintenance into predictive maintenance. So if you connect a light bulb, the light bulb is some sort of an IoT device. It will tell you it reaches in 100 hours, it's end of life. So in 50 hours from now, you need to change this. So the way you do your maintenance within your hotel can be optimized, and therefore, you have a more cost-efficient operation in this. So the next thing is mobile engagement, because we all love being mobile, right? So everything is mobile in a hotel. So all those mobile engagement, the things you can do on mobile devices whilst you're walking around, that's for us also a mega trend we see there, where IoT comes into place because you want to interact in a more connected way. You want to stay connected. The things you do at home with your social, private, business blending, being up to date all the time. That's what's going on there within mobile engagement. Location-based interaction. We all talked about location-based services. But that's not enough anymore. You need to have location-based interaction based on your profile collected there. Where you are, what's going on around you. You need to filter this back and feed this back into that device. And then, have you ever tried to use an app that has been developed by an R&D guy? It's logical in a technical sense. It is completely illogical to a human being. So therefore, if you engage in such a journey in this automation process and you use such interfaces, yeah, we have an interface, yeah, we can do this. No one is touching this because it doesn't make any sense. So the change from a graphical user interface into a natural user interface, that is the next big step that needs to happen in hotels. And for us as human beings, the most important natural user interface is voice. So if we can interact through IoT devices with the hotel, with the services based on our own voice, right? Then we are taking the next step in, these really customer satisfaction, this onboarding that's going on there. And last but not least, because of the multitude of IoT devices and providers and companies that are collecting data, and they have wonderful solutions out there, the most important thing is that you have an open API system that connects to all those devices so that you are not blocked by any future development, that you can go ahead and push through into the next phase of this IoT AI journey.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, guys?
No, I agree, and I think take concierge for example. The old kind of model of going to a concierge desk and getting advice of what to do. It's still important that there's someone there who's local, so it's not just entirely enabled by your phone. But we've partnered with a concierge service, for example, the same thing through the app. So instead of building all those complicated elements into the app, we might as well just have a simple app that you can book a room. Know where the hotel is, where to go in the airport, etc. And that's really it. Everything else is links to another app that's probably doing it better than we could do it ourselves. So concierge being one of them. But our staff is trained to be able to enable that and also be able to know what's going on and what's offered there. And we tailor the experiences in the app itself to who we think is going into New York or who is going, what kind of guest it is. So again, it's not us saying that we're creating that, but we're enabling it through other third-party sources.
Well, one of the arguments or discussions about IoT during this day is that, well, guests tend to have then, multiple devices at the same time, whilst they already have their own smartphone. How do you see this as a kind of challenge?
I think looking at human behavior, looking at myself, right? So my entire life, my entire brain's on my smartphone, right? So I prefer to use my phone. So by enabling the onboarding and the integration, the dynamic integration from let's say, your own mobile device, smart device, through a check-in process, and all of a sudden your own smartphone becomes the room phone. With all the services, it's the right way forward. Because, would you use a tablet that is provided by the hotel in the room? Would you?
Well, I wouldn't,
Exactly.
personally.
Exactly, because, would you use a normal phone, an analog phone in that room?
It depends on a couple of things.
Okay.
Right? Like the integration. How can we make sure that if we integrate our phone to the hotel system, that it is secure enough and, we touch upon the security issues.
It's also about the use case, right? So I think there's been a lot of experimentation around this and putting hardware in rooms. And I think what we've learned as an industry is that there are some scenarios where automating it or making it less human of an interaction is actually less efficient for the property. So if your systems aren't fully integrated and it isn't seamless, then ordering room service through an online app versus picking up the phone is actually in some cases less efficient and creates more headaches if it's not integrated seamlessly. So for those systems that are focused on the integration piece first and have just open, flexible architecture around that, and that's the core of their principles of design, I think that's where we're seeing some progress. But it's all about the use case in the room and what people are actually going to do. And then also the legal constraints around a hotel, right? You have to have a physical phone in a room in many cases. So that may never go away until the legalities around that change. But I think there's just a ton of opportunity around what other data can we leverage on the devices and how can they be complementary to one another and supercharge the offline experience by automating and enhancing what's happening behind the scenes with that data.
Yeah, I would totally agree on that, and I wouldn't call it a challenge that people using many different devices. I would see it as a chance for the hospitality industry, because what does it mean? We have many more different touch points, how we can interact and engage with our customers. So it's also having more control of a user during his stay, because I can log in my device, so I have a personal identifier. So you as a hotelier, you know who I am, what I'm looking for. So I checked in, I come to my room, I check in, I log in on my phone, and I'm looking for wellness treatment. So what happens? You can directly or actively pushing an offer to me. So it's not I wouldn't call it a challenge. I really would call it a chance for everybody sitting here.
Yeah, and I think it actually makes user experience even more critical than it's ever been before, right?
Absolutely.
And I think, attention is now more valuable than money in every industry, right? So if we're in this attention economy and we have all these devices and this new additional layer of data being applied on top of everything, our ability to actually create a meaningful interaction in the short attention span and that short amount of fixed finite time we have with our guests is even more critical.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the use, and coming back to the use of your own devices in a hotel, right? So what you're trying to do with your data, with the interaction before staying in a hotel, is you push this to some kind of smart devices. Most of the time, it's your own device where you push the information to, right? So if you don't facilitate, that this device is part of your hotel stay, you have an interruption, a break in the life cycle, because once you leave the hotel, again you push the information to the same smart device, but not whilst you're staying in the hotel. So actually, it needs to be there. You have to have these bring your own device, change your smart device into a room phone through a check-in process. And I totally agree with you. It needs to be really taken care of. It needs to be seamless. It needs to be spot on that all the services, hassle-free, are rendered to that device.
But what about then, because having this, suppose if you have your own device integrated to the system of the hotel. Now we move on to the after stay, as you mentioned that, the after sales.
Yeah.
How would this influence the after sales? How do you think that you can ensure that, okay, the data that you get during the guest stay at your hotel, that you can make use of it, for instance, or you're not? Probably.
You do, but it all depends on, do you give consent to use your data into being processed afterwards? That is something, that's on a personal level, and, we can make recommendations, but we cannot say yes or no, you have to do this or no. That's not up to us. But if you look at, for YOTEL, they don't have a certain, let's say, loyalty app. And maybe it doesn't make sense for the airport hotels. Maybe it does make sense. I think you're in the middle of, defining what's right for you. How do you onboard and how do you get this information? I think one of the most important things is that goes for employees and for guests is part of the gamification of it. So if you invent some kind of a game, a gamification around it, you still interact with your guests, even if they're outside, they left the hotel, but by collecting game points, by getting things, you still be in touch with it, And the same goes for the employees, because, when you change the journey to IoT, artificial intelligence, for your guests, do not forget about the employees, because they have to be on the same train, on the same track as the guests are. And you can onboard them by using gamification.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's also, it's actually maybe, so that's one way to do it. I think it's even simpler than that. It's just what value are we providing our guests in exchange for that data, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if there is no value, then they will not give. So I think that's where we've got to be better as an industry about stepping up to provide that value and actually investing in the technology that is required to bring all of it together. And that's, we talk a lot about what's possible and the really cool use cases, but without that foundational layer of a single source of truth about a guest that can be used and leveraged and actioned by your staff on property across every application. From the time they're on your website, they decide, oh gosh, I'm going to pick up the phone and call, I have a few questions. That's got to be seamless. The call center agent has to know what you were doing on the site. And then when you get on property, they have to know that you are a return guest and you're a return visitor, and that's so infrequent today. It's still unfortunate that a lot of properties you walk in and they have no idea you've stayed there 15 times that year. So we've got to get to that place as an industry and really get aggressive and honest with ourselves about investing to make that foundational layer happen before the rest of this can really come to reality and fruition.
Now, I'm wondering about what YOTEL might take on this.
Yeah, I think the other thing that we haven't mentioned is also how technology has allowed us to actually untap revenue that we necessarily wouldn't have gotten in other ways. Mm-hmm. So, for example, the late check-in, for example, of course we have it on when you book a reservation at YOTEL, you can click and say I want a late checkout and purchase it in advance. But also while you're there, sometimes at noon when you're about to check out, at that immediate point, that's when you want to know. And so it's enabled on your technology on your smartphone to say, okay, well maybe I'll just now be able to stay another 2 hours, and that's in the airport hotels. So moving that into the city hotel brand, again taking inspiration from the airport side, that using technology to tap that untapped revenue that we wouldn't have gotten necessarily had we not had it. And so we did it in New York for the first time in this past year, and we got another $300,000 in revenue for just late checkouts that were immediate decisions, but they were all through technology. So again, it's taking that and enabling it in a way that, if we didn't have that technology, would you go downstairs, pay for it, and then leave? Probably not. You just want it immediate in your room.
It's a great example because you're charging right at the moment of need. It's the point of need and the point of sale converge in that instance. And we've seen I think it's at least $2.5 million of additional revenue flowing through our systems for hotels based on just late checkout alone. Mm-hmm. And that's because they're starting to offer it at the right time and they're charging a price people are willing to pay at that moment.
And it's also revenue managing that because
yes, exactly.
I won't deny the fact that when we first did it, TripAdvisor reviews were rather negative about it, but then it started getting better as you saw that, okay, well, if our occupancy, we run a 94% occupancy, over the year, but if, in January in New York, why not charge $5 or $10 for late checkout? We're not trying to just take extra revenue just for the sake of it. It's actually a way for us to capitalize on it.
Mareike, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I think, and to realize that all what you just mentioned is really that we are not afraid of leveraging the data we can get of users to really make sure that we can have that kind of process, because everybody of us, each individual hotel has loads of data in the cellar, first-party data, which we can use, plus on top, each individual user is giving us every day many information about us, and we are often like risk averse and think user don't want that we have that kind of data. But we need to use the data to get engaged and to serve our customers in a relevant way. It's really important I think it's really important to understand that it's quite valuable to leverage that data and to enrich the current system we have to get in touch with our customers.
Okay. Andreas, from the technology solutions provider point of view, in terms of what kind of the future in this development, how do you see artificial intelligence and IoT would really drive the industry in general?
That's a good question, and it's a tough one to answer, because I don't have my crystal ball with me, so I don't know what to tell you. But I give you my opinion, right? Mm-hmm. And that means, for me, the way I see this is when you again look at the customer journey. And the first part, it's when you're still outside, you're not into the hotel. There is a higher percentage of artificial intelligence because you collect data. The minute you come into the hotel, the percentage changes in favor of the IoT part, and when you leave, it's somewhere a mix, right? So, can we avoid IoT and artificial intelligence? No, we can't. And they will converge eventually into, and YOTEL is doing this already, into the use of robots. So for certain areas, for certain services, you will combine, IoT and artificial intelligence into the use of robots, into automate things further down the line. Will this be done in 5 years on a bigger scale? I don't know. Will this be done in 10 years? For sure. All right. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity here, especially in a service-focused industry, and it again is all going to be relevant to what your individual brand strategies are and how much or how little you are comfortable automating, as well as the physical presence of humans versus robots on property. I think it's really going to be exciting to see the different brands apply that based on what their promise is to customers. And I think once we start to look at what are the most painful tasks that we can actually offload or delegate to, whether it's robots or whether it's artificial intelligence and automation that can make that possible, I think it's going to be really exciting to see what's next. But the Internet of Things specifically, I was thinking about this over the last few days too. The news that's come out of the States on just some of the issues with the NSA and the ability for you to use smart devices to start to sort of breach that level of trust that we have today with consumers and what we're exchanging. I think it's going to make the hotel room experience and the security around your systems even more critical, and that's going to be even more important as you invest, because that's very personal, right? The room experience is very, very personal, and for you to bring these devices into the room, I think that means you've just got to be more diligent as well about the investment, scalability, and security behind the scenes.
Yeah, so good for you to bring this one up, because this is exactly what within our hospitality cradle, the foundation we lay from a, let's say, solution perspective. It's a key element. It's pivotal that we have these built-in security through a number of things. We have the IoT containment. We have the unique network profiling. We allow the mobility between the IoT containers, whether it's a hotel thing or it's a privately provided IoT application. Then we do, on top of that, we do a lot of code scrambling, so we make sure that, you know, that no one can hack the system. And if you get access to that switch, for example, then within a certain timer, we replace the code somewhere else, right? So there is a floating source code inside those systems, which is, by the way, approved by the US government, by the federal government, so that's good. They're the one that hold the key, but anyhow, that's a different story. So, but doing this, that ensures really your confidentiality, your security, your privacy within the room, right? And you need to have this foundation, because, you know, if you do IoT, you cannot contain IoT to a certain hotel building property. It is always connected to the internet. That's the Internet of Things in itself. So therefore, building the layer, you know, this network foundation that embeds natively by default security is pivotal for all of the hotels that, and you know, that will go on this journey on IoT and AI.
Thank you, Andreas. I think we are at the end of our discussion now, and having heard this information about AI and IoT, and having your results as well of the voting in the beginning, we would like to have another round of voting with the same question and see whether you are going to change your mind about what AI or
Don't cheat.
IoT or automation would be going to integrate. So in which fields in the hotel, again, you have 10 seconds to vote. So in which fields is the hotel industry already willing to integrate innovations? Is it in automation? And I think here we can say that automation equal to robot, actually, in the end. It's kind of a combination of Internet of Things and artificial intelligence, isn't it? Or is it more in the Internet of Things? Or is it more in the artificial intelligence? Or in all of these fields? You can vote now. 10 seconds. It's still quite consistent.
Well, hang on a second. Hang on a second. What happened here? Who changed
This
his
is really
mind?
interesting. This is really interesting. Well, at least we got slightly higher percentage on AI.
We doubled the AI because we were at 6 point something and we're now on 11, let's say 6 to 12. So that's...
Thanks. Oh, yeah.
We doubled.
True.
Yeah.
Between 6 and...
We dropped down a bit on automation and we increased by 15%.
Yeah, the first result in the first round for automation was 38%, and now it's 30%, so slightly downsize. Internet of Things, the first round was 27.5.
Now 19 point.
Now 19.5. Someone slightly getting reluctant on that?
I think some people left the room.
Could be.
But maybe what we just discussed before, an interesting question would be where the people are coming from. I think mainly from Europe, from the US, from Asia. So because we just discussed, depending on where people coming from, the sense of understanding is totally different. So maybe we can ask that question.
Could be, yeah.
To understand the results.
Yeah, true.
No, I think it also shows that we don't know yet. So I think you know, we have to continue to evolve as things change, and you know, we'll do our best, but nobody knows.
Indeed, and it's actually, to me at least, it's shown in all fields, in all of these fields, there is an increase from 27 to 38.
10%.
So meaning then you guys actually are expecting that it's all going to be happening in the future in the industry, in hospitality industry. Having that said, thank you very much for your attention, and
thank you.
Thank you for the panels. Thank you.